Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Ranta, partner and head of practice for strategy at Nimble Gravity, and we're thrilled to have you join us today for a comprehensive exploration titled the GA4 to BigQuery Bridge and Transforming Analytics for Actionable Insights. In an era where data drives decisions, bridging analytics tools to sophisticated data warehousing platforms is key for actionable insights. Today, we're going to dive deep into the synergy between Google Analytics GA4 two esteemed professionals from our industry, Courtney Lee from Nimble Gravity and Chris Cook from Suitebriar. Together, they're going to illuminate the processes, the benefits, and the intricacies of the analytics bridge. To kick things off, before we get into a presentation and demo, I've just got a couple questions. And let's go ahead and dive into those. So we're going to start with Courtney. Courtney, how has the evolution of analytics tools like GA4 reshaped the way that businesses approach their data strategy?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So the evolution of analytics tools has really driven businesses to be more intentional with what and how they track their data. So the transition towards cookieless and modeled data changes how we have to think about the data that's reported out of these tools. And modeled data helps fill in the data gaps that we couldn't perceive before with the cookie-based tracking. So it gives us a much more connected view of our users' true journey for things like, cross-device, getting a better look at our channels. But with this modeled view, it's also important to consider how to track data in this new cookieless landscape. And of course, while it's a lot of effort to go through the process of reimagining your implementation, it's also a tremendous opportunity to ensure that you're tracking data intentionally. So for example, if you had a lot of unused events data in your universal analytics or data that was hard to read, you had to go look at your documentation every time you wanted to figure out what a certain event was, the transition to GA4 provides a fantastic opportunity to reshape those events and clear out that noise that you had in universal analytics. It also gives businesses the opportunity to intentionally focus on the desired outcomes of their data. So with this, I always like to start with the end goals I'm trying to achieve when thinking about a data strategy, such as what questions do I need to answer with this data? What dashboards are going to be the most important for me when I have this data set up? And what are the data points that I have wanted in the past that I've been unsuccessful in tracking before? Like, what's my wish list? What is the dream data set that I want? And once you go through the exercise of kind of brainstorming these questions and these metrics and dimensions you might want, it allows you to determine what your strategy is going to look like as a whole, and ultimately provide you with the more ability to get actionable insights at the end result, because you've already gone through the process of determining what data is going to be most important and most valuable for your business. So that's really what I think is kind of the most important things here.
Nice. That's great. Thanks for sharing all that. Hey, Chris, could you shed some light on the significance of data warehousing and the pivotal role that a platform like BigQuery plays in modern data ecosystems?
Sure. So data warehousing is the process of storing data from multiple sources in one central location for analysis. So this will allow businesses to gain insights from their data that they wouldn't be able to otherwise. And BigQuery is a cloud-based data warehouse, and it's specifically designed to be scalable, fast, and very easy to use. It's a very popular choice for businesses, really of all sizes, because it offers a variety of features that make it really easy to manage and analyze data. Some of the biggest benefits of BigQuery: scalability, can handle huge amounts of data. So if you're a growing business, you can know that you can continue to put your data in BigQuery. It's very fast, so it allows you to analyze data very quickly, to make decisions. It's very easy to use. So if you don't have a lot of technical expertise, makes it pretty easy. And it's cost effective. It's a very cost effective way to store data. So if you're looking for cloud-based data warehouse that's scalable, fast, easy, and cost effective, then BigQuery is a really good option.
Great. That's perfect. Thanks for that. So in the next segment, Chris and Courtney are going to walk us through a series of crucial topics around GA4 and BigQuery and combining the two and answer a bunch of questions for us. So I'm going to turn it over to them to lead us through a presentation and then a small demo. So Chris, why don't you go ahead and start sharing?
Will do.
Great. So I will start by walking through our slide agenda. So we will discuss how to validate Google Analytics 4 data, what is Google BigQuery, why you would use BigQuery with GA4, what is a Google Cloud project, how does BigQuery store data, how to connect your Google Analytics 4 to BigQuery, and then we'll walk through a live demo. So to start, we'll discuss how and why we need to validate GA4 data before getting started with BigQuery. And it's important to ensure that you have accurate data going into BigQuery so that you're not trying to make sense of a mess of data later. While it's possible to revise some of the data in BigQuery, such as maybe you had some demo purchases that ended up in your production version of GA4 and you want to delete those, you can delete those in BigQuery, but it's much better to have confidence in your data tracking from the start so that you have matching data in GA4 and in BigQuery and less cleanup to do later. So to make sure that you're starting with a clean slate, we recommend auditing some of the following. So the first, it's our most basic, it's validating that tracking is set up on all pages in GA4. So while this is, of course, kind of the most basic thing for GA4, you really want to make sure that you don't miss key pages of your site or have duplicate page views that would skew your data. Once you know that your page views are set up correctly, then you'll review your enhanced measurement. So as we talked about before with data strategy, if you've already decided in your data strategy that you want to track certain events with custom events instead of just using the out-of-the-box enhanced measurement, then you would want to turn off any enhanced measurement that would duplicate whatever you're creating with custom events so that you're not increasing your events count and your storage that you would have in BigQuery later. And also, of course, you just don't want the extra mess of trying to figure out, am I looking at this click event or this other click event? So once you've determined and reviewed your enhanced measurement, then we highly recommend activating Google Signals. So Google Signals will increase the likelihood of thresholding in your GA4 data, but they also give you the advantage of seeing so much more. So you'll get to see demographics and interest reports, cross-platform reporting, remarketing, and advertising reporting, all of which are vital for getting that full picture of marketing analysis in your GA4 platform. Next, we recommend setting up the referral exclusions. So this would be excluding things like your third-party payment tools like a PayPal. This is the same as Universal Analytics, where we don't want the payment tool to take credit for the transaction. Rather, we want the actual marketing channel to get credit for that transaction. So that's an important step to set those up. Then we can also create custom channel groupings in GA4. This is a more new feature of GA4 and really helps to clear out some of those unassigned channels with your more custom channel groupings or more custom UTM parameters that you're sending. So we definitely recommend doing that. Then, like we're talking about today with linking to BigQuery, we also want to link to other tools like Google Ads and Google Search Console. So we're getting that full range of tracking across all of our marketing tools. And lastly, we'll validate that the e-commerce tracking is set up correctly and accurately passing data. There's a new data layer used for that e-commerce tracking. So ensuring that that data layer is using the same correct naming for all of the new items lists and things like that is very important to make sure we're getting that data correctly passed through. So there's a lot of other additional items that we could help you audit or that you could look into to make sure every step of your setup is correct. But I think these are a great starting place to make sure that you have accurate data moving into BigQuery. So with that, I'll pass the mic to Chris to tell us more about BigQuery.
Excellent. Thank you, Courtney. So let's just jump right in and get into what is BigQuery. So BigQuery is a fully managed petabyte scale analytics data warehouse that enables businesses to analyze their data very quickly. It's a very powerful tool that can help you gain insights that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get. There's no infrastructure to set up or manage, so you can just jump right in and get working right away, and take advantage of some flexible pricing models as well. So why would we want to take our data that lives in BigQuery or lives in Google Analytics and move it into BigQuery? There's several reasons, and Courtney touched on a few of them, but we'll go into them a little more detail here. So you may run into issues or limitations of which metrics or dimensions are available in standard reports using things like Data Studio or Looker Studio. Reports can be created without restrictions here. So the export provides access to all of the raw event data and user data as well. We can combine with other sources such as Google Ads, Facebook Ads, potentially any sales data that you have. We can use BigQuery to set up custom channel groupings. If you have a lot of traffic, you may see warnings about thresholds and data sampling being applied. With BigQuery, you get access to 100% of all the data. You can also integrate with data visualization platforms and tools like Looker or Looker Studio. And you can take advantage of the free usage tier or no-cost sandbox and start using it and querying data at no cost. So let's get into a little bit more about the cloud and what the cloud is and what a cloud project is. So BigQuery is part of Google's cloud. And a Google Cloud account is required to access and use BigQuery. But the good news is if you have Gmail, then you already have an account because your Gmail identity will also work for Google Cloud. So BigQuery itself is tied to what's called a Google Cloud project. So what is a Google Cloud project? It's a container for all of your Google Cloud resources. It's a way to organize all of those resources, control access to them. You can create multiple projects for different purposes, such as development, testing, or production. It sort of holds all your users and billing and all access to APIs and such. So we're going to use a Google Cloud project to store all of the Google Analytics data. And in order to do that, we just need a project that has the BigQuery API enabled and a billing account linked, or at least the sandbox turned on. And we'll touch on that a little bit here in a minute. So let's talk a little bit about how BigQuery stores its data. It presents data in tables, so rows and columns. So think of a spreadsheet, and it's optimized for doing analytical type queries. It stores data in what we call a data set, and that's what holds all of the tables. And your GA4 property is contained inside of a data set. So if we look at the BigQuery console and just sort of look at the components here, we can see that the project is located here. In this case, it's the BigQuery public data project. And we have here below that, we can see several data sets. And the one here highlighted is the Austin crime data set. And inside of the data set, we can see any tables. So that's sort of how it would look if you were to go to the console. And you can see that we have a data set ID here that we can use later on to make queries into that data set. So let's dig a little bit deeper into each of these components as it relates to the Google Analytics data. So for each property that's linked to BigQuery, a single data set gets created, and it has a specific name of analytics_property ID that gets added. And the property ID just refers to the Google Analytics property ID that you set up when you create a Google Analytics property. And each property from Google Analytics will have its own data set. So one property equals one data set. So a table, each data set has a table, and that table has a name of events underscore and then the date. And it's created each day for a daily export. You'll get a new events table with the new date. If you selected a streaming export, then you get an events intraday table gets created as events get streamed into it, and then at the end of the day, it will be rolled up into an events date table, just like the daily export. So if we look at columns a little closer, we can see that the table contains here rows and columns, and each column in the table represents a specific parameter. And then the columns are categorized. For example, there's an event column here, and all of the data that's stored for that event. Looking at rows a little closer, so a data for an event may be in one or more rows, depending on the type of record that it is. So here we can see a page view event will have multiple rows, and it would look similar to this. So we have our event date and our timestamp. We have the name of the event. In this case, it's a page view. We have all of the event keys and the values. So for instance, the page title on this page view was the home page. And each can be repeated and populated in subsequent rows that are underneath. So if we look at how to connect, it's only a few steps. We would create a project inside of Google Cloud and enable BigQuery, turning on the API, and then we would just link our Google Analytics property to BigQuery. So there's a link here that would take us to effectively a demonstration or a walkthrough of how this is done. And you can see here that this is really just a page with all of the instructions on how to do it. And I've read through it and set this up, and we'll kind of walk you through it here. But know that you can always come back to this page. So the first thing it wants you to do is to set up an account or enable the BigQuery sandbox. You can see that there are, to enable the BigQuery sandbox, there's just a small set of steps here that you would do to set that up and enable that for your use. BigQuery has a free usage tier, so it may not even be necessary to set up the sandbox, because you can probably live in the free tier for a lot of things, especially doing some initial testing. You can see that you can get 10 gig of storage a month, a terabyte of processing queries, and before you process a query, it tells you how much data it's going to process, so you don't need to run the query to find out. So you get access to quite a bit of things here without being charged, and this is on a regular basis. So you can probably enable a project and turn on BigQuery without having to use the sandbox, unless you've got a lot of data. So here, if I connect to the cloud and I get to the dashboard, I can create a new project and set up a billing account and tie it into my organization. And then I would need to go in and enable BigQuery as an API. So I would go to this to the APIs page here, and I would click Enable APIs. I would search for BigQuery and find the BigQuery API. And I've already enabled it in this project, but if it wasn't, there'd be an Enable button here. And that would allow me to turn on that API. You can see here that it is enabled for this project. And that will allow me to make connections to it or use the service altogether. So step two was to, that was step two, to prepare and turn on the API. And step three was just to connect out from the Google Analytics console to BigQuery. So I'm here on my Google Analytics console. I have a sample application that I'm tracking. If I go down to my admin menu, I can select from an account, and I can select a property. I've got two different ones here. One, I can select this BigQuery link, and I've already linked this particular one out, and I can see the details for that. In the demo example here, I have another one called BQ Demo, which is not connected yet. So if I select the BigQuery link, I can now link this to a BigQuery. I'll go to my project here, BQ Demo, confirm that. It's going to live in the United States. I want to do a daily export here. I can turn on streaming if I wanted to. I want the user data as well, exported daily. I set that up. I click submit. And now that has been created. So this is now enabled, and every day I will get a daily dump of all of the data here. So you can see that one was this BQ demo that I just set up, and it's going to take a day, 24 to 48 hours before you'll see your first actual export run. And there's no way to make it happen manually. It just happens in the background. But you can see that I've got this BQ demo, the one I just did, and I've got the other one here, application, which ends in 4924. So I've got that property already set up. So if I come over to my BigQuery console and I look into my project, I can see that there is an analytics, and this is that 4924 property. And in there, I can see that I have my events, and so far it's dumped out 3 days worth of events. And I can look at the details here. I can even get a preview of what the data looks like. And I can kind of scroll through here. I can see here's that page view event that has these multiple rows. I can see the page title. This was a login page. So the data is all here, and it'll be here every day, and I have access to it. And then I can start to use it in other ways. Looker Studio has a bunch of templates pre-cut already for Google Analytics that I can go in here and grab, point to my data set, and then start having nice little dashboards to play with, or even to start grabbing some widgets and doing some cool things. But we're going to save that for another webinar. But at any rate, that's kind of how easy it is to get your BigQuery set up to accept your Google Analytics data. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Matt and see if we have any questions.
Yeah, that's great, Chris. Thanks so much for running us through that, and you as well, Courtney. Appreciate that. I've got some further questions, and I just want to let the audience know that we're going to open it up for them to ask some questions as well, and they'll see a questions section on their area and can go in and start typing questions that they might have there for us to answer here in just a few minutes. However, before we do that, and we've now gotten a good grasp of that bridge between GA4 and BigQuery, let me ask a couple more questions of the two of you. Courtney, could you explain some real world applications where that GA4 to BigQuery integration has actually transformed business outcomes?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are two cases that I see pretty commonly driving a lot of business outcomes. So the first one I kind of mentioned before with thresholding. It's a very common case that we're seeing with GA4 that the data is thresholding for any activity that happens for under 30 users. So the reason GA4 does the thresholding is to protect the privacy of those individuals. For example, if you have one user doing an activity and you have Google Signals on, theoretically, you could tell a lot of information about that one user with all that data, looking at maybe their gender, location. So GA4 decided to threshold so that you can't pinpoint a specific user. So it makes sense why GA4 did this. But it's important to also maybe be able to see some of that data where it happened for under 30 users. So for example, we had a client recently that has a small set of visitors that are completing a complex lead form. So we were finding cases where if we really wanted to see the non-threshold data, we might have to wait a couple months to see that full look. So instead, this was a perfect use case for using BigQuery so that we could see the full funnel journey for their small number of users that were otherwise being thresholded in the GA4 UI. And we could really understand what that path was for those users, how they're engaging with that lead form, where they're dropping off, what pages of the form they're most engaged with, and ultimately having that raw 100% unsampled data in BigQuery drove a lot of actionable insights for this client, being able to see that full picture. So I think this is a great use case of BigQuery, as we'll all probably at some point see thresholded data in the GA4 UI. Being able to know that you can pull that similar data in BigQuery is super helpful. And then the second use case that I think is also very common is more of a bigger strategic case of being able to combine, as Chris mentioned before, you can combine many data sets, and being able to combine your GA4 data with your CRM data or your ERP data to really visualize everything for your business all in one place using tools like a Looker Studio, Tableau, Power BI, whatever the data visualization tool you're using. And BigQuery specifically makes it more streamlined to combine data sets and write queries specific to that end data that you want to see in that dashboard. So makes it easy to combine things like, I want to see my GA4 sessions and revenue and conversion rate, but I want to combine that with my ERP data to see what the difference is between what we're tracking online versus maybe a more online to offline look when we're looking at our ERP, and start making more decisions about how we can target the right mix of customers online and offline, and how we could really be reaching our customers in a better way. So being able to use BigQuery as a way to combine those data sources is also a huge use case that can be valuable for businesses. So those are the two that I can think of.
Nice, thanks. Chris, before we open it up to the audience, can you talk to us about how companies are ensuring data security and compliance when they're working with a platform like BigQuery?
Yeah, sure. So there are a number of ways that companies can ensure data security and compliance with BigQuery. Some of the most common methods are encryption. So data can be encrypted at rest or in transit. So it can be protected from unauthorized access through encryption. Access control methods. Access can be restricted only to specific users. Auditing, for example, all the data activity can be audited to track who has access to any data and what they've done with it. And you can set up security policies. You can implement them to define how data is handled and protected. So by implementing these types of measures, you can ensure that your data is safe in BigQuery.
Great, thanks. So I see some folks typing, and we're going to possibly have some questions coming in, but while we're waiting for that to happen, great. So here we go. In BigQuery, with row unnesting and simple calculations, it's relatively easy to duplicate the entire audience view from Universal Analytics. For example, matching values to within 1% of displayed metrics. Has the Nimble Gravity team been able to duplicate entire views within 0 to 1% in GA4? And what would an example of that BigQuery query look like? Thanks. So Courtney, Chris, you guys want to tackle that?
Yeah, I think this is a great use case. We haven't gone through the process of rebuilding that yet. But I think that is an awesome use case for using BigQuery. I think also it's been, a lot of people are still thinking of the Universal Analytics way of analyzing data has been really valuable, and we're all very used to it. And so being able to use a BigQuery to kind of replicate some of those visuals, or using something like Looker Studio to kind of replicate those visuals, I think is definitely a common use case that we're seeing. We're doing a lot of Looker Studio dashboarding to really provide a lot of that similar type of reporting from Universal Analytics. But I'm curious, Chris, if you have any experience with something similar to this.
No, I don't think I can really add much more than what you've just done.
Great.
Okay, perfect. Well, audience, please feel free to keep asking questions. You can do it either in chat or questions, and also share any experiences that you might have. While we're waiting for any additional questions that might come in, maybe I'll pose this to both of you. Big broad question. How do you see the future of data analytics and warehousing evolving, especially with tools like GA4 and BigQuery? Chris, you want to kick us off with that?
Sure. So the future of data analytics and warehousing is pretty bright. As businesses continue to generate more and more data, the need for tools like BigQuery are going to be necessary for them to grow. And tools like Google Analytics and BigQuery they're making a big impact today. They offer a lot of features that make it easy to kind of collect and analyze the data and gain insights pretty quickly. I expect to see more advances in this area, data analytics and warehousing, new tools that'll make it easier to collect and store data, as well as tools that'll make it easier to analyze and gain insights even better than we can do today. And as these tools become more and more powerful, businesses will be able to take advantage of it and make faster decisions, identify new opportunities, reduce costs, improve customer satisfaction. It's pretty exciting, and this field is constantly evolving, and it's just, I think, many more opportunities for businesses to take advantage of in the future.
Great. Courtney, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I think Chris had a great answer there. I think the only thing I might add to that is just that with everything evolving with these tools, it makes it a lot more simple for more people to get more complex data and to visualize and get more insights from all of this data. I think some of the simplicity that comes with some of these GA4 data sets and how quickly you can connect to a BigQuery and how quickly you can connect and integrate a lot of these tools makes it so much easier for people to access this data and then, visualize it and bring insights from it. So I think it's pretty cool to see how everything's evolving in a way that makes it a little bit easier. So we're not in a standpoint of everything has to be done by a data science team or a engineering team. It's starting to make things a little bit more simple for more teams to be able to access.
Oh, great. So we did get another question from the audience, and it's how much SQL experience would you say is necessary to be able to create subtables for analysis that don't require the querying of the whole data set?
I can take a swing at that. You don't need a lot of SQL experience to do this. There's you can search for some sample queries for Google Analytics in BigQuery, and there is a whole page with a variety of queries that exist, and it breaks it down for you to show you kind of how it works. Like queries for like top 10 purchases or top 10 things in a cart or something. That these are very common type queries, so you can start by looking at those and using those, and then as long as you have the ability to read a little bit of SQL and understand it, you don't need to be an expert, but you just need to understand, kind of what a select statement does and how a join works. So very small amount, in my opinion, is all that's necessary. BigQuery makes it really easy to do this stuff and make it repeatable and shareable as well.
Great. Audience, feel free to keep asking questions. I'm going to pose another one to the group here. Courtney, what are some common challenges, or even Chris too, that businesses face during the GA4 to BigQuery integration, and how can somebody plan to mitigate against those?
Yeah, one kind of unexpected challenge that can come up that I've seen in the past is with the billing step. So like Chris walked through, a lot of this can be done for free with how much that BigQuery gives you for free in your processing and data storage. But it's important to include a credit card and set up that billing stage. If you ever were to get to a point where maybe you have a bit of cost, or just in general as a backup, we've seen in the past a client had the kind of free version going for a bit, and then either the credit card was removed or they didn't have a credit card. So there was data loss for a short period of time before they got a new credit card added. And that can be a big problem. You can pay tools. There's different ways that you can get that data back in there, but it's much better to just ensure that you always have something set up in that billing function to make sure that there's no chance of losing that data. And like we talked about, a lot of this can be done for free or for very low cost. So it's just an important step to make sure you don't miss when you're setting up your property. The other challenge I do see, which is kind of related to the question we just answered about your SQL knowledge, is just kind of the overwhelm of looking at some of those data tables. I think that's a big challenge for people. You start going in there, the table name and some of that table structure feels overwhelming when you first look at it. But like Chris said, there's so many resources online that already have summarized this information for you, provided sample queries. Usually, if I am trying to create a new query, I'll Google search it first and see if someone else has created it, so that I'm not trying to start from scratch or feeling as though I'm lost in there. So I think that's a big challenge that I see, is just the initial data overwhelm. But once you kind of start familiarizing yourself with the tool or exploring some of these sample queries, it makes it a lot more approachable. Also, using things like the Looker Studio templates is a great place to start, so you don't feel quite as overwhelmed. It's just kind of going there to start playing with the data, so you're not just looking at the data tables and feeling that overwhelm.
That's great. Chris, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, it's data, right? It's getting the data right to begin with. Is usually the thing that is the biggest hurdle. A lot of this other stuff, it's already been worked out, right? All of the the exports, and BigQuery works good, and these queries that are kind of canned like this from this query cookbook, they work. You just have to have the right data in the right place. So that is usually the biggest challenge that I've seen. Other than that, it usually works good.
Yeah, and thanks for showing some of those queries in the background, the pre-canned SQL ones that folks can go and utilize. It's a good thing. We did get another question, and it's a pretty interesting one considering the transition that's recently occurred between UA and GA4. So the question is, have we had any experience connecting UA data and GA4 data? And so just to be super clear for anybody who might not know those acronyms that's on the webinar, that's old Universal Analytics that was recently deprecated and new Google Analytics 4 that's taken its place. And combining those into one data source to be able to see, for example, seamless e-commerce trends throughout many years where maybe a business was running UA previously and transitioned to GA4. And does that take a lot of time to do? So there's the question.
In my experience so far, we haven't done the exact one-to-one UA GA4 all in one, table, but we have done a lot of visualizing the data in Looker Studio dashboards so that you could see a side-by-side or kind of a matchup of, okay, here's the starting trend on Universal Analytics, and then let's continue that trend for GA4. Because the data is so different between Universal Analytics and GA4, it is a bit complex and hard to do that like specific one-to-one match across, just because it's tracked slightly differently. There is a slight variance, kind of to the previous question of seeing that like 1% variance. It's likely that there will be some variance in the data. So far, we've primarily done the visualization in a Looker Studio to see it kind of, here was what we had in UA and here's now what we have in GA4. I don't know, Chris, if you have
anything
any
additional?
experience. Mm-hmm.
No, we haven't done any of that at all.
Okay,
that I know
great.
of. I would, sorry.
Yeah, no worries at all. Yeah. So another question came through in the chat, and I think this is around, what if somebody wants to use an Azure data stream instead of something different? So what's a good advantage for a BigQuery approach, supposing that a client wants to use Azure instead of another data stream? Does that give you enough to go off of for an answer, or should we ask the audience member to elaborate a little?
So, we may need some elaboration, and if we get it wrong, but the way I understand that the advantage of BigQuery is it's all kind of baked right into Google Analytics, right? There's a whole process created for it since it's all under the same Google umbrella. You could probably use Azure. You'd have to export, right? You'd have to kind of do it yourself or customize a process, and to work out trying to accomplish the same thing outside of BigQuery. I don't really know the process of that, so it'd be hard for me to comment more, but that's what I have.
Courtney, would you add anything there?
It looks like the person who asked the question is typing, so maybe they have more context of what they're going off of. But I think it will probably depend on really the end use case for the client of what they're exactly trying to get to in the end, as to which tool or how they go about solving that problem, and how they want to connect their different systems. But I don't have much more than that to add.
Okay, perfect. Well, it looks like there might be more clarification coming, but in the meantime, I actually kind of want to go back to that question I asked you about the future of data analytics and warehousing. And I'm curious how you both think that AI might impact that specifically, and bringing forth insights and running processes, whatever it might be, right? Like, do either of you have thoughts or fears even about that?
Yeah, I'm excited for AI as it relates to things like driving insights. So we're starting to see more tools incorporating AI as an upcoming feature for driving those insights. And I think that will also kind of, to points we've discussed before of how, how things are getting more simple to get from, data sets to insights. I think AI is going to make that even easier, where you can potentially ask questions, or it will just surface, hey, here's something that looks weird in the data, and here are some findings automatically generated because it can pull through all the data. I think that will give everyone a lot more time back to focus on, okay, we don't have to waste time digging through data, pulling reports, searching for changes. They're automatically generated through the AI, and now we can dedicate time to strategy. How do we fix them? How do we ensure that our marketing strategy is appropriate based on this insight? How do we, actually take action from it? I think in the past, there's been a lot of time spent just trying to, like in Universal Analytics, every time you wanted to go find your report, you might have to go to a report page and then add some filters and then add a segment before you can get to the data you wanted. GA4 enhanced on that, where a lot more of it is really focused on you building reports that are automatically answering those questions, or you determining what you want your reporting setup to look like. And I think AI will take that even further, where instead of having so much time spent data pulling, reporting, it'll take that out and give you more time to focus on action and strategy.
Chris, would you add anything there?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that as far in that, even from that earlier question, was how much SQL do I have to know? The future is zero. Right? I just need to know how to say, what are the top 10 items added to my cart? And it'll go figure out what SQL needs to be used, how to apply it, and just bring me back the answer that I'm looking for. So that's the future that I'm excited about mostly, is not having to figure out how to do a lot of things. Just ask the question, and if the data's there, it should be able to answer the question.
Yeah, that's an awesome point. Like, you'll just be able to ask plain English language questions or whatever language questions, right? Because it'll know and be able to
Yep.
translate that into something and give an intelligent answer. That's fantastic. Yeah. So just a quick housekeeping note for folks. A recording of this will be available to anybody who attended or even just registered. If a colleague of yours maybe registered but was unable to come, and it'll be, pretty immediate available item for you. So we're not getting any more questions, and I think we've kind of run through everything that we had. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up and just say, it's been great that we've unlocked this world of data-driven possibilities about how to bridge analytics with advanced data warehousing. Thank you both, Courtney and Chris, for your insightful presentation, and to everybody out in the audience for joining us. I really appreciate that. And whether you're just a data enthusiast, a digital strategist, a business leader, whatever it might be, we hope that you leave today's webinar better equipped to harness the power of those two platforms, GA4 and BigQuery, for impactful insights. And we at Nimble Gravity, alongside our partners like Suitebriar, remain dedicated to driving growth and value for your companies. And we just ask that you stay curious, stay data-driven, and join us for the next webinar that we have. So thanks to everybody. And I'm going to go ahead and end the event, and it's going to kick us all out. So good luck. Have a great day, and we'll see you all soon.
Bye.